is doing something in the quiet that the noise never could. I need somebody to hear me on that. Because the season you are in right now, the one that feels like the walls are closing in, the one where the texts stop coming and the invitations dried up and you keep wondering what you did wrong, that season is not an accident. It is not punishment. And it is certainly not the end of your story. If you believe that, type the word yes in the comments. Because somebody watching this right now needs to know that the quiet was sent for them. Let me take you somewhere. Let me take you back to a moment in scripture that I think we have all read too fast. Move past too quickly. Because we were in a hurry to get to the miracle. In the book of 1 Kings, there is a man named Elijah. And I want you to understand who Elijah was before I tell you where he ended up. Because context matters when God is trying to show you something about yourself. Elijah was a prophet, not a sideline prophet, not a sometimes I feel led prophet. He was the kind of man who stood on a mountain in front of hundreds of false prophets and called down fire from heaven and won. He was bold. He was anointed. He was used by God in ways that most people only dream about. He had just watched God show up in a way so undeniable, so spectacular, that the whole crowd fell on their faces and cried out that the Lord, He is God. Elijah had a moment that most ministers spend their whole lives working toward. And then something shifted. A threat came. One woman, Queen Jezebel, sent a message that said she intended to destroy him. And the man who called down fire from heaven, the man who stood in front of hundreds of enemies without flinching, ran. He ran into the wilderness. He sat down under a tree and he told God he was done. He said something like, "It is enough now. Take my life. I am not better than those who came before me." He was exhausted. He was afraid. He was alone. And in the very moment when the world would have said, "Look at that failure. Look at that prophet who lost his nerve," God did not do what we might expect. God did not rebuke him. God did not rehearse the miracle. God did not say, "How could you forget what I just did?" God sent an angel, and the angel touched him, and the angel said, "Arise and eat." That is the verse I need you to sit in. Arise and eat, not arise and perform, not arise and figure it out, not arise and explain yourself. Just arise and eat. There was food waiting. There was water waiting. And Elijah ate and then he lay back down. And the angel came again because the journey is too great for you. The journey is too great for you. Oh, I need somebody to feel what that means. Not, you are too weak for this journey. But the journey itself is bigger than what your current strength can carry alone. And God was not embarrassed by that. God was not disappointed by that. God was providing for it. Elijah got up, and in the strength of that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights to a mountain called Horeb. And when he got there, he went into a cave. And I want to stay here for a moment because the cave is where a lot of us live right now. And nobody is preaching about the cave honestly enough. The cave was not a failure location. The cave was not where broken people go and stay broken. The cave was where God showed up and had a conversation. The Lord came and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And Elijah poured it all out. He said, "I have been very zealous. I gave everything I had, and I am the only one left. And they are trying to kill me." He felt alone. He felt targeted. He felt like his sacrifice meant nothing because the situation had not changed. Does anybody know what it feels like to have given God your very best and still end up in a cave? You started that business. You prayed over it. You believed over it. You sacrificed for it. And the numbers are not moving. You stayed faithful in that marriage. You did the counseling. You did the inner work. You read the books. And it still feels like you are sleeping next to a stranger. You raised those children in the church, gave them every foundation you could build. And now they are making choices that break your heart. You gave that job your sharpest years, your most creative energy. And now you are sitting in a quiet season that nobody warned you was coming. And in that cave, you are asking the same thing Elijah asked. What am I even doing here? Here is what the text does next that most of us miss. God told Elijah to go stand on the mountain. And there was a great wind that tore through the mountains and broke the rocks in pieces. Powerful, dramatic, undeniable. But God was not in the wind. Then there was an earthquake. The ground itself was shaking. But God was not in the earthquake. Then there was fire. And God was not in the fire. And after the fire, there was a still small voice, a gentle whisper, a sound of thin silence. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and he went and stood at the entrance of the cave. That is the moment I want to live in with you for a while. Because I think we have been looking for God in the wrong places. We have been waiting for the earthquake season, the fire season, the dramatic turnaround season. We have been telling ourselves that when God shows up, it will be loud. It will be undeniable. It'll be something everybody can see and nobody can argue with. And in the meantime, we have been sitting in the cave missing the whisper. The whisper is where God does his deepest work. The whisper does not show up in the middle of a crowd. The whisper does not compete with your notifications and your group chats and the noise of everyone else's opinion about your life. The whisper comes in the quiet. It comes in the stillness. It comes in the place that your flesh has been running from and your spirit has been aching for. I am talking to somebody right now who has been running from the stillness. You stay busy because when you stop, you have to feel things you do not know how to feel. You scroll because when you put the phone down, the thoughts get loud. You fill every weekend with activity because an open afternoon means sitting alone with yourself. And that version of yourself makes you nervous. You are not lazy. You are not distracted on accident. You are afraid of what the stillness might show you. But here's what God is saying through Elijah's story. The cave is not your coffin. It is your classroom. The cave is the place where God asks you questions, not because he needs the answers, but because you do. What are you doing here? Not said with a scowl. Said with the tenderness of a father who wants his child to be honest about where they are so he can tell them what he already knows about where they are going. What are you doing here? What is really going on underneath the performance? What fear are you actually carrying? What wound have you been calling strength for so long that you forgot it was still bleeding? What are you protecting when you stay busy? What are you avoiding when you fill every quiet moment with noise? God is not afraid of your honest answer. He was not afraid of Elijah's honest answer. Elijah said, I am alone. I am tired. And I feel like nothing I did mattered. And God did not argue with him. God gave him food. God gave him rest. God gave him a journey. God gave him a new assignment. God told him there were still 7,000 who had not bowed to the false gods. You are not as alone as you feel. The story is not as over as it looks. That is the reframe I need you to receive today. The story is not as over as it looks. Because here is what I have learned about isolated seasons. And I say this not as someone who read about them, but as someone who lived through them. The seasons that feel like God has gone quiet are often the seasons when God is speaking loudest. The problem is he is not speaking in the frequency we were tuned to. He is not showing up in the wind, in the earthquake, in the fire of a crowd's applause, in a successful quarter, in a viral moment. He is whispering, and the whisper requires your full presence. The whisper requires you to stop performing and start listening. Somebody needs to hear that. You have been performing so long, even in your relationship with God, that you have forgotten what it feels like to just sit with him. You go to church and you perform worship. You pray and you perform prayer. You post a scripture and you perform faith. And underneath all of that performance, there is a woman who is tired and uncertain and quietly wondering if God even sees her. Not the version of her she shows everyone. Here, the one in the cave, he sees her. He sees you. He sent this word right now specifically for the version of you that has not been performing. The one you hide from most people. The one who cries in the car on the way home from work. The one who smiles in the picture but prays in the dark. The one who keeps showing up even when showing up feels like the most courageous thing you have ever done. That is who this is for. And I want to talk about what the cave is actually developing in you. Because it is not nothing. It is not wasted time. It is not a holding pattern while God figures out what to do with your life. The cave is building the very thing that your next level requires. I will say it plainly. The version of you that you are becoming in this quiet season is not the version who would have survived what God is about to give you. Elijah came out of that cave with clarity, with direction, with rest, and with the name of the people who were going to walk beside him into the next era of his assignment. He came out knowing who to anoint as the next prophet. He came out knowing the names of kings. He came out with specific instructions for specific people. None of that was available to him before the cave, because before the cave, he was moving too fast, burning too bright, and carrying weight that was not entirely his to carry. The cave slowed him down enough to be accurate. And I need somebody to understand that slowness right now is not falling behind. Slowness right now is accuracy. Because the decisions you make when you are exhausted and performing and desperate for validation are not your best decisions. The relationships you reach for when you are terrified of being alone are not your healthiest relationships. The opportunities you chase when you are driven by fear of missing out are not always aligned with where God is actually taking you. But the woman who comes out of the cave, the woman who has sat with herself long enough to know herself, the woman who has been quiet long enough to hear the whisper, she does not make decisions from panic. She does not choose community out of desperation. She does not accept just anything because she is afraid nothing better is coming. She waits. She discerns. She trusts. Not because she is passive, but because she is prepared. In preparation, I need you to understand, is not punishment. Preparation is priority. When God takes you into a season of stripping, it means he has something coming that requires you to travel light. You cannot carry the new assignment and the old approval addiction at the same time. You cannot step into the next level of influence while still needing everyone's validation to feel worthy of it. You cannot build what God is asking you to build if your identity is still leaning on the applause of people who were only assigned to a season of your story. Some people left your life not because God forgot about you. They left because God remembered you. He remembered the assignment he put inside you before you were born. He remembered the promise he made before any person had the chance to define you. And he knew that some of those relationships, as real as the love in them was, as meaningful as those seasons were, would become weights on the very thing he is trying to launch. Releasing them was not rejection. It was refinement. I know that is hard to receive because release hurts. Even when something is not good for you, it hurts to let it go. Because grief does not check whether the thing was healthy before it arrives. You grieve it because it was yours. You grieve it because it was familiar. You grieve it because you built memories and rhythms and inside jokes and shared history around something that the next season cannot sustain. And God does not make fun of that grief. He is not impatient with your process, but he is consistent in his direction. And the direction keeps pointing toward the cave, toward the quiet, toward the stillness where the whisper lives. I want to talk to you about what happens on the other side of the whisper. Because Elijah did not stay in the cave forever. And you will not stay in this season forever either. But I need you to understand what comes out of someone who was willing to go all the way into the quiet. What comes out is not just a stronger version of who went in. What comes out is someone who has been given new sight. Elijah went into that cave burning with righteous fury and burning out simultaneously. He went in feeling alone. He went in feeling like his work had been wasted. He went in convinced that he was the last faithful person on earth. And the conversation with God in the cave changed the prescription on his lenses. He came out seeing that there were 7,000 he did not know about. 7,000 who were faithful, who were holding on, who were not bowing even when nobody was watching them refuse to bow. That is what the cave gives you. It changes what you can see. It expands your perspective beyond the single story you told yourself when you were tired and afraid. In the noise, you could only see what was immediately in front of you. The problem that was loudest, the person who hurt you most recently, the door that just closed, the opportunity that just ended. But in the quiet, God can show you the 7,000. He can show you the connections you have not made yet. The doors that are building while this one is closing. The people who are praying for someone exactly like who you are becoming. The cave does not shrink your world. It clarifies your vision. And I will tell you something else about what comes out of the cave. Emotional independence. And I mean that in the most spiritually healthy way. I do not mean becoming cold or closed or too proud to need community. I mean becoming a woman whose peace is not entirely dependent on whether someone responds to her or notices her or validates her or stays. Because here is the vulnerability truth. So many of us have built our sense of self on the scaffolding of other people's approval. And the moment someone withdraws their approval, the whole structure shakes. The moment a friendship shifts, we question our worth. The moment a relationship ends, we question our identity. The moment someone chooses a different seat, we wonder what we did wrong. And we spend enormous amounts of emotional energy managing what other people think of us instead of managing what God has said about us. The cave breaks that dependency, not by making you hard, but by making you whole. It teaches you that you are already the beloved of God before anyone says yes to you, before anyone picks you, before anyone promotes you, before anyone sees what you are building. You are already chosen. You are already covered. You are already known. And that knowing, when it moves from something you say to something you actually live from, changes everything. It changes how you walk into a room. Not because you have something to prove, but because you are no longer afraid of what happens if no one notices. It changes how you make decisions. Not from fear of missing out, but from alignment with who God made you to be. It changes how you love people because you stop needing them to feel something that only God can feel. And you are free to love them as they are instead of loving them as you need them to be. I know that is a lot. I know we are in deep water right now, but I need you to stay with me because this is the thing that changes a life. The woman who comes out of the cave anchored in God's voice, unhurried by comparison, unbroken by what left, and unafraid of what is quiet. That woman is not who went in. She is better, not in the way the world measures better, not louder or more polished or more impressive on paper, better in the way that a tree with deep roots is better than a beautiful plant with no anchor. When the storm comes, the plant falls, the tree stands. God is not trying to make you impressive. He is trying to make you immovable. And you cannot become immovable in the noise. You become immovable in the cave. You become immovable when you sit with the whisper long enough to let it reshape your understanding of who you are and what you are for and whose you are. So I want to speak directly now. I want to speak to the woman who has been labeling this season wrong. You have been calling it abandonment. God calls it appointment. You have been calling it delay. God calls it development. You have been calling it punishment. God calls it preparation. You have been calling it loneliness. God calls it his undivided attention. Because think about what the whisper requires. It requires closeness. You cannot hear a whisper from across the room. You cannot hear a whisper through the crowd. You cannot hear a whisper while you are performing. The whisper requires you to be close, to be still, to be present. And if that is what the quiet season is producing, if it is pulling you close enough to hear the thing God has been trying to say over all the noise, then the quiet is not your enemy. The quiet is your gift. Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you to make on yesterday's strength. I need somebody to receive that as a personal word. You have been trying to take the next step in your life on the strength you had 2 years ago, on the faith that was appropriate for the last season, on the identity that served you in the chapter that God has already closed. And you are exhausted because you are trying to run with the tank that was not designed for where you are going. Arise and eat. Let God nourish you in the quiet. Let the stillness be a table instead of a threat. Let the season of stripping produce the hunger for what only God can provide. Let the cave be the place where you trade performance for presence, where you trade noise for knowing, where you trade the validation of people for the voice of the one who named you before anyone else had the chance. Because on the other side of this quiet, there is clarity. On the other side of this stripping, there is strength. On the other side of this cave, there is an assignment with your name already on it. A community of people who will genuinely reflect what God has placed inside you. And a version of your life that the scared, people-pleasing, performance-addicted version of you could not have navigated. But you, the one who went all the way into the quiet and stayed long enough to hear the whisper, you are ready. You are being made ready right now. In this very moment, in this very season that has felt like it was destroying you. The cave does not destroy you. The cave delivers you to yourself. And the self you meet there, the one without the mask, without the performance, without the noise of everyone's expectations. That woman is extraordinary. She always was. God built her that way before the world got a chance to convince her otherwise. And every layer this season is stripping away is not taking something from her. It is returning something to her. Her clarity, her voice, her peace, her assignment, herself. So if you are in the cave right now, I want you to do something. Stop trying to get out. Stop filling it with noise. Stop managing your way out of the discomfort. Wrap your face in the mantle of trust and walk to the entrance. Stand there. Listen. Let the wind blow past. Let the earthquake shake what was never stable anyway. Let the fire burn what was never meant to last. And then, in the silence that follows all that dramatic undoing, listen for the thin place. Listen for the whisper. Because it is there. It has always been there. God has been speaking in a frequency that requires your full surrender to hear. And what he is saying is not what the fear told you. He is not saying you are forgotten. He is not saying you are finished. He is not saying the best is behind you. He is saying, I see you in the cave. I know how long you have been in here. I know what you lost to get here. I know what you are afraid I will not bring back. And I am not going to explain everything right now because your heart is not quite ready for the full picture yet. But I can tell you this, the same God who prepared the food before Elijah needed it has already prepared what you need for the next step. The same God who made sure Elijah was not actually alone has already placed your 7,000 in positions they do not even know yet are arranged for your next season. You are not forgotten. You are being formed. And there is one final thing I want you to carry out of this moment. After everything God showed Elijah in the cave, after the wind and the earthquake and the fire and the whisper, after the question and the conversation and the new direction, God gave Elijah something that I think is the most underestimated gift in the whole story. He gave him a companion. He told him to find Elisha. And Elijah went and found Elisha plowing in the field and threw his mantle over him. And Elisha left what he had been doing and followed. The cave did not produce isolation as a permanent state. It produced the discernment to recognize the right partnership at the right time. That is what this season is doing in you. Not making you alone forever. Making you wise enough to recognize your Elisha when he or she shows up. Making you whole enough to let someone walk with you without needing them to carry you. Making you secure enough to be in authentic community without being destroyed when that community shifts. The cave seasons make you ready for covenant, for real partnership, for connections that are built not on who you used to be or what you used to need, but on who you are becoming and where God is actually taking you. So receive this. The quiet is not empty. The stillness is not failure. The cave is not your final address. It is your formation room. And what is being formed in you right now, in this season that nobody has been applauding, is something so specifically crafted for where God is taking you next that when it is complete, even you will be amazed at the person who walks out. Arise, eat. The journey ahead is great, and you are being made ready for every step of it.